We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. So welcome to the Okay. Is Abby in the view studio? Okay. So welcome to the Ward 4 Town Hall. Thank you so much for being here. We are also recording this because we intend to have this live somewhere, and specifically YouTube. And we want to make sure that this is information that keeps on being talked about because this is important for us. So I'm Tammy, I'm the Ward 4 City Councilor. With me today is Abby Zaley. Better? Okay. And I think that we'll get started. Do you want to do your greeting first or are we doing? Okay, let's start with our land acknowledgement. So the city of Hamilton is situated on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas. This land is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which was an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe to share and care for resources around the Great Lakes. We further acknowledge that this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Today, the city of Hamilton is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we recognize that we must do more to learn about the rich history of this land so that we can better understand our roles as residents, neighbors, partners, and caretakers. For me, I take great value and respect for this land acknowledgement, and I try and incorporate these things in all of the things that I do. As part of this, I would really love if I can ask Joanne, who is a board member for the Hamilton Regional Indian Center, but also an elder and respected member of our community. Joanne, I wonder if you can bless this meeting for us and do an opening prayer, if possible.
Pretty out. Anyway. Become the dreamer and then share the dream. Please listen to the rhythm of your good heart, your strong heart. Hear the best, the beat of the honor, of the joy, of your joy. Feel the spirit soaring. May you heal, may we heal. Please become the dreamer, share the dream. And let's have a good session this evening. Be quick. Thank you.
Good, Joanne. Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful and lovely. So now I'm going to ask my colleague Abby to just give us a run of what we're doing tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tammy. So I'm your Ward 4 trustee with HWD. To jump into questions from the lovely Pascal over here. I also just want to say that hi to everyone on the line as well. So we're going to do questions from Pascal. We are going to move into Dante Hill is going to tell us a little bit about his role as Indigenous student trustee with the HWDSB. And then we will move into questions and answers from the audience and folks that have sent questions in advance. Jack has some cue cards, I think, if anyone has any questions. No? No cue cards? Thank you for your questions. We'll just have a conversation. If anyone needs the bathroom, they're just outside to the left. And if you would like to have a cue, please help yourself. Have a good chat.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Pascal Masha, and I'm the constituency assistant for Councillor Tammy Wright, and I will be your moderator for this thing. So we're going to start off by introducing everyone. Introduce your name, where you're from, and what does democracy mean to you? So we'll start with Tammy, Councillor Wright with the mic.
Hi, Tammy, Ward 4 City Councilor. What does democracy mean to me? It's actually so much, so it's really hard to kind of boil it down to one. For me, the core aspect of democracy is about giving a voice to the people. But then in my current role now as a sitting city councillor, it's about serving the people and ensuring that their voices are actually heard and are actually being actioned upon. So I think of democracy as being a couple of different things, but that's the one that I think I can boil it down to, is that democracy for me is about serving.
Hi, everybody. My name is Stuart McDonough. I work at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. We represent all municipalities, sort of the municipal voice for advocacy, and I lead a Healthy Democracy project. And some of my colleagues, this is everybody's job right now, just shared some information about how we're positioning democracy, and I thought I'd read it to you today, and I don't want to take credit for the words. A local democracy is the engine of community life. It's the most direct and accountable way for residents to shape the world they live in. Beyond being an order of government, it is a shared promise that our neighborhoods should be guided by the people who call them home. So that's whether by voting, by running, we have agency over the decisions that affect our futures. But that's what democracy.
Hi, I'm Abby Zeatley. I'm the Ward 4 trustee with the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. And when I think of democracy through the trustee lens, I really think about shared responsibility. We represent the ward that we live in, but we work together to make sure that the voices of the entire community are being seen at the table. We really rely on meaningful community engagement like we're doing tonight, or civil council meetings, or any way that we can have a chance to connect. And we really rely on our other trustees, the 10 other trustees that sit around the table to be doing that same work. So at my ward, we don't have every program that the HWDSB offers. So we really rely on my other trustee colleagues to be engaging with their community and bringing those voices back to the table so we can collaborate, and their information along with staff data and their expertise can really make sure that we are speaking up for all of the voices within our community.
Hi, everyone. Daniela Giulietti. I'm the Director of Public Affairs at YWCA Hamilton. We're a big multi-service organization. We serve 14,000 people a year here in Hamilton. We do have a building in Ward 4 on Ottawa Street that you can visit at any time. We do housing and childcare, job development services there as well. My role is an umbrella term for communications and advocacy and government relations. But I've also worked in partisan politics, and this is near and dear to my heart, and thanks for having me. I guess I'll focus on democracy from a citizen's lens. Democracy is any action you can take to make your voice heard by those who have more power than you, whether that's engaging with government by putting a ballot in a box, or informally by sending a hopefully very kindly worded email to your trustee or city councillor, or putting your name on a union card and getting involved in democratizing your workplace, and how you engage with the land as a treaty person, especially if you're a settler. Good reading my notes.
My name is Peter Stars. I'm Mississauga and Hamilton. You all know me as my GST name, which is Joanne Webb. So when I took this personally, democracy is to me is having freedom. It's freedom to be able to go and listen to town hall meetings. Freedom is getting that ballot and being able to choose your representative, no matter what level it is, and giving them, and hopefully they're going to do what they promised to do. So that's what keeps it from madness, the freedom, and everybody has a voice, and they can use it. A lot of people don't have that choice, and we have to teach. We have to let people know that they do have that right to vote. Some of us still don't know they do. And so that's my more personal. Input.
Thank you, Miigwech. And thank you. I thought it was very interesting that everyone has a very different definition of what is democracy. If anyone knows me, you know that I'm very analytical. And did I change it? So I went into the dictionary and I went to see what was the definition of democracy, and I didn't like the definition of democracy. So then I broke down every other word inside the definition of democracy to come up with this definition, which is that democracy is a form of rule, conducting policy and affairs and establishing and enforcing rules with authority in which power resides in the people and is exercised by them either directly or through representatives. And originally it said elected representatives, but sometimes your leaders are not necessarily elected. Some are appointed. So we're gonna pass the mic. Here's how we're gonna do it. Pass the mic, hand the mic over, and then while I prepare the question, it should hopefully get to the person by then. Yeah, we're all team. Okay, so Tatami, also known as Councillor Brown. We have this talk in our office very often about power and who holds the power to talk about power. Not in the we want it all, but more in the like, what is power? So how do you see where power resides in local democracy?
So in the office, power actually sits with Jack and with Pascal. Because they're the ones that are the closest to the people. They're the ones that actually sit and answer phone calls and talk and directly work with residents. Because at the end of the day, I am usually the bottleneck. Because I am sitting in 15,000 meetings. And so waiting for me to do that work is not possible. So this is where the power sits with Jack and Pascal. But then when we talk about further on, I also talk about how I serve 39,000 people in Ward 4. Ward 4, I am directly accountable to 39,000 bosses, because those are the people that have elected me to be that Ward 4 city councillor. But then on top of that, I'm actually also accountable to 587,000 people in the city of Hamilton. So not only do I have bosses at the 39,000 level, I also have 587,000. So I've never had so many bosses in my life. It's definitely something to be humbled at. And in fact, power is with my bosses. My bosses tell me how to run and govern this city. However, I also have to understand that there are real constraints around what I am allowed to do as a governor. I don't have carte blanche power. I have to work within a system that is the corporation of the city of Hamilton. So in terms of power, the people have way more power than I do. I'm just a conduit into the internal runnings of the city of Hamilton. Hope that makes sense to everybody.
Excellent, thank you. If you really want to answer that question as well, just give me a little. But otherwise, if we could pass the mic back to Joanne. In her position as city councillor, talk to us about the colonial version of democracy with elected official through parliamentary style. But that's not the only way to have decision making. What are other ways of decision making to help move policy?
So, and talking to each other and telling us what we need and we need to be heard. And so we problem solved with everybody, not just the elected officials. As you said, that's all your bosses. Well, we need to really sit down and listen to what we have to say. And especially when it comes to indigenous issues, we've been far too long sitting in the back row and not saying anything. And we need to be able to speak and say, and honestly, see what we want and what we need.
So you mentioned sitting in the back row. We're gonna get back to that in a few minutes, but we're gonna go on to trustee Zately. And we're gonna start talking about some of the bills that have come forward recently. So Bill 33, which you might have heard of, is called technically Supporting Children and Student Act. It received royal assent this past November, making it law. The official opposition accused the government of replacing local democracy with secrecy and partisan political control. But the government argues that it is to prevent corruption and mismanagement at the board level. So in your view, as a local trustee, how does Bill 33 affect local democracy?
So, I mean, indirectly and extremely directly. So, Bill 33 has effectively given the Minister of Education sweeping powers to take over boards, which essentially removes all trustees at the board and puts in a supervisor in basically in their place. So it literally is removing every democratically elected trustee from 8 boards within our system right now. It also it means that at any point he could also do the same thing to the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board or the rest of the boards across Ontario. It completely takes away any voice that parents might have. It not only removes trustees, but every meeting that used to be public, the special education meetings, the parent involvement meetings, audit, all of these meetings that used to be available to the public are no longer available. So all these huge decisions that affect so many families that are under supervision, boards under supervision, no longer know that anything is happening at their board, any big decisions are being made until they're implemented at their school. So we're taking away not only their voice, but their ability to advocate for change. So right now at our board, if something is happening that the public doesn't like or they want say in, all of our meetings are public. Folks are welcome to come or join online or delegate or come to us and speak about their issues. We can bring that back to the board table so that the ongoing discussion involves their voice. And that's been completely taken away from 8 of those boards, which is they're a huge board. So it's a huge percentage of the families within Ontario right now. And then the possibility that that could be to any of us in the future.
And I know that it's really hard for all of us to keep up with all the news these days because there's just an onslaught of everything happening all at once. But this week, the government also tabled Bill 101 called Student Achievements First Act. And so as of today, it's passed second reading and it's now referred to the Standing Committee for review. So how does this proposed bill change things? Because I think it's also related to Bill 33.
Absolutely. So it doesn't change things as much as it adds on to the existing Bill 33. So Bill 101 was
Yeah, it came out like 3 days ago.
So Bill 101 really businessized, but that was not a word. Or like, yeah, makes the school board more into a corporation than it already is. By potentially removing our director of education and putting in a CEO, so someone with a financial background instead of someone with an educational wonderful, an education background, thanks, Tammy. Which will change the entire structure of the way that we work at the board. That CEO and director of education would have essentially like strong mayor powers, but for the director. So if there's a decision that trustees make, if they don't like, they can go back to the Minister of Education and get that changed. So it definitely changes our abilities to advocate, mainly when it comes to the budget. So we still have our responsibilities around advocating for community and policy direction, but it really reduces our influence on budget, on collective bargaining. And I mean, and in terms of democracy, one of the big things that it also caps our wages to much lower than our already very, very low wages. Which will really reduce the amount of people who are able to run for this role. And in all fairness, I would love to run out of those because it's much easier. But for democracy's sake, like it is best to have as many people out there as possible running against each other so we have proper representation. So, and I think this will really cut down the amount of people who want to even put their names forward.
So, follow-up question, this was not on it, but you mentioned you get paid so very little. Do you mind giving us an example of how very little? Because I believe that the supervisors are making $350,000.
Absolutely. So it's all public. So yes, supervisors make 350 plus 40,000 in expenses, and trustees make in Hamilton make approximately $13,000 annually, and we will be now capped at $10,000 annually.
You definitely need to have a slide gig on that. And then you also mentioned the school boards across Ontario, but just to be clear, there's 4 school boards here in Hamilton. We have the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board, the Hamilton Wentworth Catholic District School Board, and the Conseil scolaire Viamont and Conseil scolaire catholique Montagny. So talking about education, let's move on to youth. So I'm going to pass the mic off to Stu. AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and the City of Hamilton, have been working on a healthy democracy project, which is aimed at youth or for youth. Why is it important to get youth involved so early on in democracy if they can't quite vote yet?
I think, and this will be a great question for Dante too, and we'll have good perspective on it. We are making decisions all the time in municipalities, school boards that affect the communities that young people are going to inherit. And to have their voices involved, it's the same as we need different perspectives involved in the process. We need Indigenous voices. We need more women involved. We need marginalized communities, low-income communities. We need young people, all different types of demographics bring different perspectives and different qualities to the conversation. And the decisions improve the more diverse the conversation is. They're more likely to be accepted and lived when people see themselves in the process. But the other part of this is that, well, young people are more flexible in their thinking. They're more able to look at perspectives outside of their own. And I think too, a lot of what's happening in our communities is that what we believe is acceptable behavior has shifted for some people, typically on the fringes, whether it's right or left. What's acceptable behavior is changing. And I think what we need to do is collectively work with young people, listen to young people, and help them understand what it is to be civically ready to participate and how to do that, and that to humanize elected officials so that they're not seen as targets that you can just say anything to, but that there's somebody's daughter, somebody's grandmother, somebody's uncle, that the words that you use on these people have impact. So we want them to be able to think critically. They don't need to memorize things anymore. That's all on Google, but you need to know how to decide if the source that you're looking at is credible and true. And that's getting harder and harder. You need to know how to have difficult conversations. So we've created suites of resources. We have civic education resources that we've developed in the project. In those, we have guides, and Tammy, actually, Councilor Wang was a part of the pilot program. And we do things in that like a 4 corners exercise. So you'll say to a classroom, is a hot dog a sandwich? And then you'll have people say strongly agree, somewhat disagree, strongly disagree. And you can end up getting into more and more complex issues, but it helps people think through why somebody might be in a different budget. So all those kinds of resources are really important. We're working actually with the City of Hamilton and a group called Model City Hall on using really good work that happens here in Hamilton and creating resources that will be available for all 444 municipalities. And actually, and for any youth that you're aware of, Dante's going to be there as well, so that means it's going to be cool. On May 9th, if I'm thinking correctly, the Hamilton Youth Summit is going on, and a lot of that work is going to be around how do we engage young people in the process? How do we encourage them to get out, to participate, to vote, to register? You can register as a young voter, even if you're not ready yet, and it gets you in the process. So all those things together, I really believe that lasting real change in what we believe is acceptable behavior, reclaiming that will come through the next generation. Doesn't mean I'm giving up on the current generation at all, but if young people know how to reclaim this space, then we'll be better off for it.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about what's appropriate behavior a little bit later. But you did mention how decisions improve when there's more voices at the table. So we'll pass the mic off to Daniela. So the YWC recently ran a campaign school called Reaching for Power, a municipal campaign school for equity. And it was a series of workshops to give women and gender diverse folks the knowledge they need to run in the upcoming municipal elections. So why is it important to have a diversity of voices in municipal council, and how does this affect how decisions are made?
Thanks for the question. And thanks you for starting off the answer. The campaign school we ran, we were doing for, I want to say, 6 election cycles. It used to be called the Elect More Women Campaign School. It used to be called the Elect More Women Campaign School. Better. Yeah, no, you're fine. Totally, sorry. Oh, I got it. So YWC Hamilton has run this campaign school. It used to be called the Elect More Women Campaign School. We started running it 6 or so election cycles ago. And this time we had some requests to expand, to call it a campaign school for equity, and not advertise super widely, but to invite all genders and, focus more on allyship than just getting women elected. Hamilton City Council actually did achieve gender equity in the 2018 to 2022 term. I think 8 women on council. But of course, we want broader representation than that. And I'll start with a silly anecdote. My neighbor is Nigerian and she's very funny. And a few elections ago, she said to me, I see on this ballot 3 men, their names sound the same, they look the same to me, they talk the same. I think they even all mentioned that they like baseball. Should I eeny, meeny, miny, moe it, or should I stay home? And this is a nurse who's, traveled half the world to give her children a better life. And I want her perspective in the ballot box, and I want her to stay home. So, that's one simple thought. But the bigger issue there is the more homogenous any elected body, the fewer times their perspectives are challenged, and challenged respectfully, I reinforce, but sometimes in those situations, a motion just gets passed without any dialogue at all. There's no discussion. So they're not encouraged to use their flexible brains. And that can be really, really dangerous in a world that needs a lot of change to make it better for most people. I just want to quickly acknowledge Trustee DeHaan, who's just joined us.
I'm going to pass the mic off to Julia next. So you talked about having that voice and the importance of having that voice, because if that voice is not there, you can't challenge respectfully. And so now I ask Joanne, the Circle of Beads, and for those who don't know what the Circle of Beads is, it's a group of local Indigenous leaders and organizations. And they've been asking City Council that there should be an Indigenous seat at Council to represent First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people. The last we left off, there was an ask to see if there would be a feasibility study, and that right there did not even pass. So it kind of ended there, but doesn't mean it's over. So how would this representative have helped democracy, Joanne?
Pretty well, everything that you said, all these other people are like, we want our voice We want people to know what we want, what we need, especially. And that we don't have a chance to expect, this is our territory. We should be able to, have a voice. And we're asking for voice right now, but we like that voice is known. We can't survive unless we're able to voice our opinions. Like one of the things in friendships I was doing, one to a 6-week course. To train, not to train, but to let people know what's happening, what all the different levels of government. That we won't lose our status if we don't. They need to know what's going on. I think it's one of the better things that I think we should. But we want, and we'll keep on lobbying apparently to have that or.
I think we talked about it a little bit the other day about how it also ties into the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the calls to action.
We can mark that as part of one of the things out of the 94 resolutions, but we're pretty lacking on the programs about it. We have 20 that are done and ready to go. The rest are either they're holding or being investigated or it's just straight as awesome. But we will keep working at it and just it's a hard job and myself, I think has been kind of silent lately, so I think we need to do some.
You. Thanks, Alderman Drummond. We are operating this governmental land that is not ours. I just want to say it on record. I hope the next time that this request comes forward, as we have this conversation about increasing green space and recognizing that this land is not ours, that settlers, including it is our job and it is our reconciliation that we echo that call.
So could you ask them to and it's actually very interesting that we're talking about how you might want something, but then the government in place says no, or the government says do this, and you might not agree with this. So we've heard that, or at least we imply that you might not be in favor of Bill 33 or Bill 101. And there's been resistance to these bills, but they were tabled by the government of Ontario. And according to some definitions of democracy, this is the elected government. So is passing a bill not democracy? Is that not democracy? Tough question.
And also, no. It's part of democracy, absolutely. The way that the bill was passed, is questionable about how much of an influence the public had. There was a lot of steps like this, consultations with the community. And because they have a majority, it went through quite quickly without a lot of the steps and debates that would normally have around this type of work. But it's a hard one because I think that we've been doing a lot of advocacy around it and letter writing campaigns, and all of that also ties into democracy as well. So yes, as a whole, I think it is democracy is just it's not using everyone's voice Sorry, I'm like, do you want me to continue? No, yeah, it's, yeah, it is hard, because it is, yes, they did pass a demographic thing, but they did not, listen to the voices of all. We should have a say. And at the end of the day, if folks don't want us in our positions, they cannot vote for us, and that would be democracy, so I'm passing it.
Thank you. I realize I'm just doing twice as well. I said I wasn't going to talk about Bill 33, but our organization doesn't have a position on this bill. However, I will say, I don't think voting to remove kind of situation where we need a more democracy than this.
Yeah, everyone, yeah, no one's ever asked for less representation. It's not one issue.
See, it's not easy, it's kind of messy, so now we're gonna pass to Tammy to talk about messy democracy. Gosh, so I know that, Plug, you truly believe in an act in a way where residents will guide your decisions in council, which is what you talked about when you talked about your definition, so I'm not making this. But how do you balance the different and sometimes conflicting wants and needs of a community when you are acting as a councillor?
Pascal, could you have given me an easier question?
Was Abby's question easier?
Correct. You win. In terms of, I serve 39,000 bosses. And I don't know about you, but some of my bosses don't agree with each other, and not all of them are all on the same page. And say, okay, great, let me see how I can best support and work on that. But at the end of the day, I am a conduit and a vehicle to share those concerns with the corporation of the city of Hamilton. The city of Hamilton delivers these services to us, and I include myself, as the residents. They have certain constraints, restrictions. There's also money is not doesn't grow on trees. So there is a fiscal responsibility to how we deliver services. So at the end of the day, when I have to weigh out how best to serve the Ward 4 community and serve the city of Hamilton, I can't go on vibes. I can't go on feelings. I have to be data driven. I have to look at things from a analytical stance, taking into account community feedback. However, there might be times where you just cannot fulfill the wants of the community. And there are going to be days where I essentially have to also be the conduit from the city of Hamilton to the community by announcing and speaking about these are the things that we can and cannot do. These are the things that the city of Hamilton is constrained. These are also the things that we also cannot, we just have zero, we don't have the capacity to do it. So as much as I have to relay what my bosses want to the community, to the city of Hamilton, I also have to relay what the city of Hamilton can and cannot do to my bosses. And it gets messy in that in between. So, and what I also get is I get frustration, ire, sometimes real and true violence against me as the messenger. Now, later that on, is that I also have an opportunity to be one vote of 16 to affect change. So then when I think about how do I affect the change that my bosses want, I can absolutely work behind the scenes, talk to the city of Hamilton, talk to the staff about changing policy and changing the way we do things. I am also one of 16 votes, which means I spend a lot of time talking to other 15 people to convince them for why this policy needs to work and needs to do that. I don't always win. I don't always get 16 votes all aligned with me. But that's also part of the mess. And that's also part of the challenge. And that's also part of the role that I am privileged to be in, to do this work and to serve the community. It's long-winded. Ultimately, it's messy. Thanks for that question. You're welcome.
Although technically your record, none of your motions have been defeated. Statistically. It's stupid.
Yeah, and just on top of that, in that messy space and in that negotiation between positions is often when the best policies come together. And in life, I think most of the people here would agree that absolute positions usually fall. And there is something to learn. And when we can get past people's position, understand what their interests are, positions become hard to move people. If you can get past that to what is your interest, what is it that is behind that position? And then when we understand, I just want it to be safe, or I want something to be more important. If you can get to that space, you can find some common ground. And then the part that's often missed, and for a wide variety of reasons, when you do engage and when you do have these conversations, and that does impact your decision or what you're advocating for, it's then, and I've worked in engagement, it's then telling them afterwards how their voice was used, why things didn't work out one way or the other, demystify how government works, and to take the ball up from City Hall and to show how the sausage is made. So that people can understand my voice was listened to. I was able, it did impact things in this way, or it didn't for this reason. And that's where people start to believe in the system. They start to see that they are part of something. That's the hardest part. It's the hard one.
There's always some compromise to be made. Well, hold the mic, because the next question is for you, which kind of ties into what you were sort of starting to allude to, which is how has misinformation and disinformation affected local governance? And we talked about some other city councils in other municipalities in Ontario going a little sideways.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a good one and it's an important one. And I'll start by saying all of the issues that we're seeing in the health of local democracies, none of them happen in isolation. They're all interconnected. So the landscape of misinformation is starting to be more rampant, is largely heavily impacted by the loss of local media. It's not as big of an issue sometimes in the bigger centers, but I can't remember what the stats were, but the Hamilton Spectator used to have X number of reporters that was a fraction of what it used to. And post news sources onto Facebook and Instagram is actually not as big of an issue for the newspapers, but it's a bigger issue for your locally elected officials who are trying to combat misinformation with a third-party recognized source. And if you can't do that, then it's just he said, she said, and that becomes a problem. So those are issues. Then there's also, especially during times of campaigns, there's outside influence or on big issues. And an example that I shared before is in the municipality of Leamington, one of my favorite mayors. They were having a planning meeting, and a whole group of 15-minute city conspiracy theorists tried to take over the council meeting. And they were coming in to intimidate, they had hunting knives strapped to legs, some instances, different things like that. And they're yelling at people, it was taking away people's safety.
Does everyone know what 15-minute city is? Raise your hand if you.
I'll do a very quick version of it. It's basically this, it goes back to an idea that popped up. I think in Paris and came into the United States is this notion that somehow city planners were trying to almost build the walls so that you live in a 15-minute space that you walk in 15 minutes. And and you're gonna be kept in there. You're not allowed, because it was about trying to increase your driverless spaces. And it's, so walkable communities are delightful. Nobody's going to ever be able to keep you within a 15-minute boundary. Nobody wants to. But if we were able to create communities where there's livable spaces where your amenities would there. Thank you. That would go a long way. So these people though believe through misinformation that this is a real thing that your municipalities are trying to do to you. And even about that, so they had to cancel the meeting. This is happening in a fair number of municipalities, things like this, not everywhere. These things aren't being felt equally all over the place. It's really important. But then that has an impact. So the mis and disinformation, the willingness to exhibit awful behavior, then has an impact on how the municipality engages. And some municipalities have gone fully virtual for all their meetings to keep people safe. I understand why, but there's real challenges to that. And then once you've started to take away some of the best ways to engage with your municipality, you stop seeing yourself being a part of the process, which has an impact on whether or not you're going to engage, whether or not you're going to vote, whether or not you're going to run for office. All of these things are interconnected, and that's the cycle that we're trying to break.
Why? Yeah, I just want the gauging mode. I don't have a transition for this next question. Sorry. Pass it over to Tammy. We're gonna go back to the beginning. As we mentioned at the start of our town hall, we are on the traditional lands of many Indigenous people, the Erie, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe. Neutral. Testing myself. When we were chatting with Joanne and Audrey from HRIC, like this is an important question, but what are you doing for your relationships with Indigenous people who you kind of also represent, because Ward 4 is one of the largest Indigenous urban population in Hamilton. So what are you doing for your relationship with them and to hold the agreements that you are bound to as a council?
Joanne's looking at me directly,
Staring at her answer right.
yeah, staring right into my soul. I will tell you that I am on a learning journey, but I am also so open and so welcoming for any type of relationship that I can have with the urban Indigenous, with the First Peoples that have been here. And so I spend a lot of my time actively reaching out and having these conversations, and also always trying to avail myself as much as I can to Hamilton Regional Indian Center, NOWASA, Dita-Wadanese, any of our our Indigenous surveying organizations, in order to say, I am here to be a better steward, but also be a better friend and partner to the Indigenous. And so part of that is also doing that work, and it's about being much more present and being a lot more intentional with my directions, with my actions, with how I speak and how I try to show up authentically, because I also know that the Indigenous friends that I have are very quick to call me out on these things. Right. So I think that for me, how I want to be there is I want to have better relations, have better friendships, but also spend that time and really be open-minded and learning. And and try and understand how I, in my role where I am, How do I continue to be the best steward and friend and partner to not only Indigenous, but to our land and to the place that we are?
You can pass the mic off to Joanne now. And while we wait for the mic over to come over, if I can add to how much you're trying to improve your relationships, she totally got busted for smudging her office and got in so much trouble. We were showing how to smudge and we were having a really rough week, and so we just decided to clear the air, and then she got caught and got in a lot of trouble. 20-minute notice, city of Hamilton, you need to give them 2 weeks notice and you need to tell them why. So there's no instant smudge, which is a whole other story. So is it on? Turned on. This is a tough question, but we talked about it a little bit. Does colonial democracy affect Indigenous democracy? And if so, how?
Absolutely, it does. It doesn't give us a voice. Doesn't it doesn't give us an opening to part of it. And we, as Indigenous democracy, work together in circles. We would listen to each other. There's at the home of the Six Nations. There's 752 chiefs, and they get together. They make decisions. Saying that we each reserve as a council, and they make the decisions. And when we don't have a say, it changes our democracy because we are being left out. And I'm listening to everybody talk. You know, they're having problems because of this and can't do that. Well, we always know that the Indigenous people are at the back. They're at the back waiting to get our voice. I've got to say that we did a gathering just after the last municipal election and opened it up to anybody that was elected to come and sit with us. We fed them and we talked and we did a sponge and we did a little. We need more of that. So elected officials can listen to what we have to say. That was a very casual, it wasn't a question and answer. We were sitting around talking to each other. And we're going to do, if we do that more often, you're going to understand, or the elected officials will understand what we want. We can help you with the answers. Especially what we need.
Well, you say especially what you need. We talked about housing and children in care, and if that's being affected. Those are impacts that are happening right now.
Yes. The housing, one of the things at the center is that we're doing a pretty good job at housing people. With this challenge. They and work very hard, especially to open in organizations that actually move to the public. And we were there and still serving the people. And we do have trouble at the housing when we go out there. Person. And now with the cost of rent, it's almost impossible for most people to buy the decent childcare, children in care. You know, every time you turn on the loss chain, it's almost like me personally, it's almost like they have to pull it. Sleep was what these children need. And it's not just supposed to, they need to have indigenous life around. Down. Come on. Colonial democracy. Yeah, that's colonial democracy. It affects us because it keeps us quiet, or it silences us. Not keeps us quiet, it silences us. So we don't get to say it and how things work.
was one of the trainings at HRC with Brenda, and she talked about how Indigenous people, it was illegal for them to sell fruits and vegetables on the side of the road. And it was like, how is that even possible? And it was a bylaw, and we're like, oh my God, that's municipal. Because they didn't have a license to sell on the side of the road. Isn't that ridiculous? So, yeah, so the decisions made in the colonial system definitely impact other. So Daniela, so that screeching halt in their transition. We talked about democracy together a few weeks ago, and we mentioned that he wants for women to tell you, I'll vote for my husband votes. Does that really still happen? And what does that mean for democracy?
Have you ever heard that while you're making calls?
And there's a lot of Portuguese and Italian. And believing they vote, that women vote for the husband.
Yeah, it's really demoralizing, scary. When I say scary, to hear. Really giving over your voice to someone who, like, you know, hopefully you love and have a wonderful relationship, has your best interests at heart. But that's not really the point, right? When you go to the ballot box, you should be making decisions for yourself. And when we chatted about this, I originally said I'd only heard, you know, tells of this from campaigns past. I did hear this in the 2022 election, just stopped me dead in my tracks. And it wasn't an older person. Yeah, and I'm curious to hear if other folks have felt and then still years later confused and maybe dumbfounded. But I guess I could say it speaks to a complacency that I mean, I could go on and on forever. Allow me for one moment. I work at a feminist organization. I mean, 10 years ago, would anybody have ever said that Roe v. Wade would have been overturned in the United States? Here we are.
I didn't realize that was a transition. It was just okay. Yes, thank you. Yeah, we have a joke in the family, which is like, don't tell me what to do. That's like that's and definitely tells me what to do. Take what's challenge. Yeah.
I own the house. Let's see.
The next question starts maybe.
For like 50 years, women in all families have been trying to get publicly funded childcare on the ballot, and that has happened. So a few years ago, we were promised $10 a day childcare. We're not quite there yet, but the system is much more affordable than it used to be. But overwhelmingly, it was women who were doing the childcare who wanted this, not only because it relieves some pressure from them, allows them to work outside of the home, allows them to gain more independence, but a lot of the workers are child care workers. This contributes to better wages, better outcomes, et cetera. So, one of the more polarizing issues, federally speaking, definitely not top 10 for men voters. So I meetings. Make it to the top of the list for many parties. But now that people are seeing the outcomes for families, men in more numbers are asking candidates on the door, what's your stance on childcare? Are you going to push this forward? As we're seeing in
Yeah, so that kind of ties into your next question. Which is about why it's important to talk about your values openly. So it can be very intimidating to speak out about your values. I see you've got some more t-shirts in the room, but it can be hard sometimes, especially when you're trying to gain votes in an election. So why is it important to talk about it openly?
Thanks. As much as people really want civility from their politicians, and politicians want that from the people that they represent, people also want to be inspired. They want to hear brave politicians talking about the things that they're going to go to bat for, never held a mic and talked about baseball twice. They want to know, what's most important to you and what you're actually going to fight for if they make the journey from home to the ballot box. If you're a long day of work, if you're still going to make dinner and whatever. Towing a middle line, I see lots more people going to vote for candidates that feel brave to them. And if I can, I think people with more challenging values or maybe are not going to be on the right side of history. I've already figured that out and are brave, and people are inspired to vote for them. So it's more important than ever that our candidates for office are talking about their good values.
Because we have another elected official in the room. Trustee Duff, do you want to answer that question? So I just feel like you are so purely yourself and unfiltered in such a beautiful way when you're representing Ward 2 and as a trustee. And I just wonder if it's okay that I pull Trustee Duff when you're
Calling people out in the audience.
Trustee Duff feels comfortable.
I lost control. We're off the agenda. We're off script.
Okay.
So sorry. The question is, why is it important to talk about your values openly, even if you're trying to just get votes?
Yeah, hi everybody, my name is Sabrina, I'm the school board trustee for Ward 2, so Central Downtown Hamilton. I think it's important to be open and honest about your values because it also helps hold you accountable, right? People know what they're voting for when you're clear at the doors about what your values are and what your principles are. I think for me, before I sort of ran, I've been quite openly public about some of my positions on many issues that are also a bit more controversial. But I had also acted on a lot of those values in some of the work I was engaging in. I think that helps you ground yourself when you enter these systems, because there were some really good conversations on how these systems are inherently colonial, which limits the amount of work we can do with them to improve them and ameliorate them for people experiencing them. And so when you understand what your values are, it helps you navigate systems where your values are inherently not in line with those systems, right? I know that at the school board, I'm there to improve the learning conditions for students and the working conditions for workers. And I know that there's a limit to that because of colonial frameworks. But understanding that and understanding and knowing that I'm not there forever, I'm there for a good time to do a lot of good work that I can, I think helps you be grounded and also understand what is possible in the system. So I think it's important to be loud about that because it helps you know what you're walking into and then how to navigate the systems. I hope that's helpful.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Glad we got to have this, what do you call it, cameo? Yeah. So we're actually on to our question, and then we're going to go to our daunting intermission. So the last question is for you, Stu. We touched about it a little bit, and I promise you we will get back to it eventually. So this is it. we've had to wait till the end. Fewer people across Ontario are running for politics. And this is especially true for women, Indigenous people, queer folks, and people who are racialized. Why is that? And how do we reverse this trend? Now, we also talked about respect.
Okay, thank you for the question. And my last question took everybody down into a bit of a pit of despair, which is my Princess Bride reference. My age. And now is a good opportunity for me to stick a ladder down there. Yeah, so we're gonna move to optimism here. And the one thing I will tell you, actually, the one good piece of data out of the last election, and I had the privilege to speak to a group of it's called NOW, the Northern Ontario Women's Association, and it's leaders, different types in Northern Ontario, a lot of elected officials. And I was able to share with them this information that the one good piece was that more women ran and more women got elected in 2022. And I think one of the things that does is it takes away the old and tired narrative that women aren't electable. So I think we can just let that go away. So that is a good piece of news. The reason why that happens is because of efforts and groups like what Daniela does at the Y and candidate support organizations. So I'll regroup and say, what do you do about it? We get involved. You come to a meeting like this. We get our families, our neighbors, our friends involved. We take them out to vote with us. We tap people on the shoulder to say, you should run for office. You have something important to say. And then you support those people in any number of ways. It can be watching a child while they're knocking on doors. It can be knocking on doors. At AMO, we've recently launched a campaign called If You Believe, They Believe. And the website is whenyoubelieve.ca, and it's got all kinds of resources. We've actually created a catalog of all the existing candidate support resources from all of these kinds of organizations that exist, different local campaign schools, national groups like Operation Black Vote Canada, or Muslim Vote, and others. And what's really important is that we just start by doing. And what's inspiring, and I was mentioning this earlier, because there's a lot of really interesting groups in and around Hamilton that are doing important work. When we started our project in 2022 at AMO, we were kind of alone dealing with local democracy, the health of local democracy. And now there are tons of actors there were people doing good work before, but it wasn't as out loud and it wasn't as intentional about democracy, about local democracy. So libraries have been doing good work forever. They're doing more now and more specifically directed to the health of local democracies. Ys have always been in the space and doing it more out loud now. United Ways and universities and all these different groups, there's a lot of hope and optimism in there. So I think, and the reason why If You Believe, They Believe is important works on a few different levels. So if I believe that, in 2020 that Tammy White should run for office, I tap her on the shoulder, she's going to start to believe that in herself. And that's really important, especially for women who deal with imposter syndrome. It's really important. In particular, there's a really excellent piece of research done by Operation Black Vote Canada called Black on the Ballot. Black women need to be tapped on the shoulder, I think 7 times more than Black men, which is an interesting piece of information. And probably is a lot of why behind them. So we have to be out there doing that. And then if Tammy believes, then the people that she wants to elect her will believe as well. And that also matters when we think about voting. If we believe that local government matters, that my voice matters, that my vote will count, then others will believe it too and will have an impact that way. So there's a lot of ways that you can get involved. You can get involved in campaigns. You can, we've got a list of different candidate support organizations that you can look for. Get involved in the why. You can support candidates. You can look at running a debate. You can take somebody, one of the best ways to get people to vote is to take somebody. It's hugely important. Getting people to vote is not an easy thing to do. And when we wait to a couple of weeks before an election, we've waited 4 years too long. It's about encouraging people to understand the value and the importance of local government. And that if they're not voting, if they're not running, somebody else is making the decisions that will impact their future. So we have agency, we have to take that back. We have to take back what's appropriate behavior. We have to model that ourselves. And those are the ways that we can have an impact. And I think that, if we look at in particular the work that these campaign schools have done and the impact that has had on the number of women who got elected on councils all across this province, that's proof enough that and these are zero budgets. One of the biggest ones has a $5,000 budget. You could do this work on heart, grit, tenacity, commitment, and it does have a real impact. And think about the impact that those women have had in their communities on local decision. So it does work, it can happen, and it just takes to do.
Excellent, thank you. So we're gonna go into a little intermission, which is a Dante intermission. So Dante Philip is the Sagewana Galadas. No? Sagewana Galadas. I learned the word an hour. And you're also the Indigenous Student Trustee for Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. So you've got 5 minutes to tell us about what you do and how does that contribute to democracy. And tell us how what your role is.
Yeah, of course. Good evening, everybody. So nice.
Right.
So nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me in a beautiful Ward 4. My name is Dante Hillen. I'm a grade 12 student at Sherwood Secondary School. I live in the mountain in Ward 8, but I go to school in Ward 9 in Sherwood. In the fall, I will be continuing. I'm in Master University for their program about Wilson College of Leadership. Really getting into the work here in Hamilton and engaging in local democracy. And it meant so much to me, all the connections and all the folks, the beautiful people that I met here in Hamilton. And I thought, why leave that when I can continue doing that work here? So additionally, I'm serving my second term as the Sagewana Galadas, which translates to they raise the voice of their community. I'm in Anishinaabe Moa, and it translates to Epen Monda Gazat, which also translates to they raise the voice of their community. In my home community is Long Lake 58 up north, right around Thunder Bay. I have not visited my home community, but I know that I carry Indigenous advocacy right here in Hamilton. And I want to say, being grounded in that why is that local democracy is often the level of government that people think about the least, but it's the one that affects us the most. It shapes our schools, our communities, and the spaces we interact with every single day. So decisions about education, public service, and community, priorities that are all made at the local level, yet many people feel disconnected from these processes or unsure of how to get involved. The local democracy is not meant to be distant or complicated. Ensuring that communities have a voice in the decisions that impact them. Many of these perspectives that have been shared by our amazing panelists so far. And it's true. And I really like the reflection that you shared, Pascal, about the definition of democracy and defining that, and that the dictionary definition that you found was not feasible and didn't reflect our community. So I really like that you gave that spin and that Hamilton flavor to it. So I really love that. Trustee, I've had the opportunity to both experience and participate in local democracy firsthand. I represent students across the system, but especially those who have been historically pushed to the margins. Indigenous students, Black students, and other racialized students whose voices are often underheard or undervalued in institutional spaces. I sit at the board table alongside elected trustees, who actually serve as our student trustee mentors, which I'll explain a little bit more about the role of student trustee a bit later. And in doing so, we contribute to conversations that directly affect students across our system. Through this role, I have seen how decisions are made, how voices are brought forward, and how important it is that those voices reflect the communities that we serve. So the role of Sagona Galada is a bit different to the role of student trustee, but essentially, there are three of us who sit. So two who are elected by students from grade 7 to 12 on the HWPSB, and then through my group. So cultivating community, reclaiming our spaces in education, or CC Rose, was founded in the 2018-2019 school year by a group of self-identifying Indigenous students at HWPSB who were looking for a space to share really the culture and their identity, and embrace their indigeneity, but really just have an affinity space and a place where we could collaborate and just discuss anything that came up that we felt needed to be discussed with Indigenous students in a place of wellness and healing. And since then, it has blossomed into what it is today. And we're proud to follow a sustenance model of governance of the Three Sisters. And in that, we have the corn, beans, and squash who serve the Sagona Kalajat's role collectively. However, the corn, I serve as the corn. This means I attend events like this. I attend meetings of the board, and I speak on behalf of our cousins at CC Rose. Then we have the beans, who is in charge of working with our student senate. Student senate at HWPSB is a collective of elementary, high school students who to address student perspectives and projects and initiatives for the board. And they have the opportunity to work with student trustees and trustees at our board to influence policy, or also really just give a perspective of students that may be missing. And then we have the squash, who is the shadow and will be working in the future to raise us the corn and raise the voices of CC Rose. So they also help coordinate CC Rose and they attend Senate. But one thing that's really cool about all that is that we all collaborate and we're always free to attend each other's spaces and collaborate, which I think is really beautiful and something that I carry. To Ghana mix, so I really take a lot of that with pride too, and recognizing the intersectionality of my identity in my work. And I recognize how that has shaped a lot of how I understand. It's made me more aware of how different students experience the same system in different ways. Because of that, I try to ensure that when I speak, I'm not only sharing my own perspective, but also bringing forward a broader range of student experiences. What C is about. It's about representation that is grounded in real experiences. And so I want to speak that trustees play an essential role in that system. They're elected to reflect the needs and the priorities of their communities, and the decisions they make have direct impact on students' day-to-day lives. From policy to programming to resource allocation, local governance and education is where many of the most immediate and meaningful decisions are made. I can't describe it as well as Sabrina and Abby. It's just kind of what I've seen collaborating with trustees. And student trustees add another important layer. We help ensure that student perspectives are part of all those discussions, not just as an afterthought, but a meaningful and consistent contribution. Which are students and decision makers who bring forward ideas, concerns, youth involvement in democracy is especially important at the local level. There's often a perception that young people are disconnected from politics, but in reality, many young people care deeply about their communities. They just need accessible opportunities to engage. I won't go on for too much longer. I don't want to take up too much time because we have so many amazing panelists, but yes. When students see that their voice can influence decisions, it changes how they view their role in their communities. It builds a connection. It shows that local democracy is not something that's happening around them, but something that they are directly a part of. Democracy does not begin simply when you turn 18. It begins with being informed, asking questions, and participating in conversations about the issues that matter to you. I'll be holding this point dearly and dearly to my heart. I'm actually turning 18 in about 17 days and reflecting on that. And yeah, it's a big year, reflecting on that for our municipal election. Really getting involved and encouraging other youth to stay involved in that. This takes many forms, including whether that is attending a school board meeting, speaking with a trustee or a counselor, or simply staying aware of decisions that are being made. These actions all contribute to stronger and more responsive systems. Local democracy also relies on relationships. It's not about formal meetings or votes. It's also about communication, trust, and accountability. When communities engage with the representatives take the time to listen and respond, the system becomes stronger and more effective. We can take an example like today. We need more time to engage and approach our elected officials. And in doing so, this is a wonderful opportunity or an experience of being able to do that. At the same time, local democracy requires effort. It requires people to stay informed, to participate, and to care about what is happening in our communities. Without this engagement, important voices can be missed. So what does this mean to us? Well, it means taking an active role in our communities, even in small ways. It means knowing who represents you, asking questions, and being willing to share your perspective. And for young people, it means recognizing that your voice is already valuable and that your engagement matters. Local democracy is not something that exists in the background. It is something that depends on all of us to function effectively. If we want our schools and our communities to truly reflect the people within them, then we all have a role to play in shaping the decisions that guide them. Thank you.
I can't even. To it, then it's just gonna be overrun with weeds. But sometimes it's okay weeds because it's remote weed and we all want more weed in our cities. I just had a question for you because we were talking about the Indigenous seat at the city council. Have you ever had is Stu still in the shot? Yep. Fantastic. I care a lot about people being in the shot. Writing was surprised. Take on the ground. Yeah, usually I'm in the background yelling at Timmy. Okay. But yeah, we were talking about the Indigenous seat and your position is to represent the Indigenous students at the Hamilton Wentworth Indigenous School Board. But have you ever had an experience where you were sitting around the table for the trustees and you thought to yourself, man, thank God I'm here. Or like how you needed to be there and how you not been there and then that voice, not necessarily you, but the Lagawana position there, how it had made a difference if it wasn't there with the big.
Appreciate it. I think that's a really beautiful question. I do also want to speak on the project of implementing that Indigenous seat. Looking forward to engaging in that, and I'd love to reach out and work on that because I feel that not only do I carry the perspective of my own experiences, lived experiences, but also what I've learned. I carry, it's a culmination of many voices across this province. And I have the honor of serving as the chair of the Indigenous Trustee Council and the Trustee Association, which is known as All-State. And on there, we are hearing from Indigenous students, trustees from across this province, those who live on community, off community, remote, rural, and urban, bridging all the perspectives of Indigenous students. And I feel that carrying that voice in itself and really solidifying that legacy and ensuring that we're there means the most. So I could say that speaking and attending board meetings, I think there's many times where I feel that not only I'm excited and feel honored to be able to participate in them, I feel that I needed to be there for that context. I think it's thinking of everyone who's come before me and those who will come after me too. Reflecting, I know, to my sister who will be carrying this role on. This isn't my story to tell, but I think that having her voice and building that legacy, and when we were choosing to move forward with, there was a school project going on, and there was a groundbreaking ceremony that went earlier on in the year. It's opportunities to engage in ceremony, but also in understanding contemporary issues and the ones that are standing, the ones that have imposed intergenerational trauma, but also those opportunities for intergenerational healing. And I find that value in even times when I raise my hand to speak during those meetings, because I know that it's not just myself speaking. And I know that I have a community behind me that is supporting my decisions, that is fueling how I make those decisions. And the word that I say has an intention in representing that, which is something that I feel is important. It's also important to recognize that there are times where the role may feel tokenizing or it may feel performative at times. And it's important also to acknowledge that there are many efforts being done to extend opportunities to Indigenous peoples and to engage in truth and reconciliation. That there still is work to be done, and I think that there's messaging that may be flawed, there is messaging that may be interpreted differently, but also how we're engaging in a system that is based around colonial framework. We heard about colonial democracy versus Indigenous democracy and governance, and it's actually a topic that I'll be speaking on tomorrow at a conference with the school board, and I'll be bringing one of my friends who is an Indigenous trustee and sharing that, and to be able to bring really raise our voices, which is what the intention of the language was when Sigourney Villadas and Epic Mondagas was brought forward. So it's remembering that grassroots movement and acknowledging that there's work to be done, but that we're also here doing that work, that we're resilient, and that we've always been here and we're going to continue to be there. So that's something that I will keep my word on, and that I will be spreading to any other youth who are willing to join this, because it will take community to do that. Right? We see movements that are starting with one singular person or one singular idea that then spreads to communities and those who carry those same thoughts. Not willing and able to continue doing that work. And that's why I'm excited to be staying here and really dealing with the next generation. That's why I love Hamilton.
Thank you. So now we'll pass the mic on to y'all. Does anyone have a question? Yeah.
Really, I'm from the HRC, we have a new council. And I'd like to give you my word. Joanne, like which? I mean, would you say that right? My room not bad. Anyways, thank you so much for bringing that, what you said about being outside of the democracy. And it's a real irony to me about a commercial real estate law clerk. So I look at Crown patents all the time. One thing that I've sort of realized is that the made sure that Native people had treaty rights and Aboriginal rights, also hunting, fishing, trapping rights. I believe only because Native people were actually the business people with the trapping, with the routes, the trade routes. They had everything going. They didn't want to get rid of that. So listening to you talk about being outside of the democracy, there's this train of thought that says, for a healthy democracy, you should make decisions based on women's needs. I think that if we start including Native people into the democracy and start making decisions couched in your traditions, it will actually benefit everyone. Community. Making sure the vulnerable are not left behind. He dies in isolation. Community, you can't be isolated.
You have to talk to each other. It's a way to fight disinformation. And I see it in my own little weird neck of the woods, which is part of Tammy's. And Pascal and Tammy have been, I just don't have so much time, but community, thinking and including Native people in democracy like we should. They're a $4 billion part of our economy, Native-owned businesses. Why? We would all benefit. So I think that's something sort of to keep in mind. Why don't we have a seat for them in council? This would only benefit everybody economically. And the disinformation and taking care of, it would kind of fall into place is what I'm thinking.
So very true. That's what the chip center is trying to do, and we just keep taking it down with circular beads, working with the community. YFC, which is the Ontario organization that also as divorce, but we just keep taking on that tab. It's all. I certainly did not. I was always another spoken person. I think I didn't even work. I'm losing that now because my graders are as good as it used to, but you have to keep in that. And what we do that with the friendships, I mean, they involved with the different counselors and trustees and inviting them into our home, inviting them into the center, right? Everybody's welcome to come in there. There's programs, harvest for speak up, but everybody welcome. You have an open house, you have Facebook, where anything that goes on. I think that's fun. And there's no, if you're doing it honestly, there's no question that you can't answer. If there's no question, can't ask about our and our names. And what if as long as you're doing it honestly, there's no question that people make. Answer.
Thank you, Joanne. And also, if you're ever there for lunch, Matt is like the best cook. So I'm gonna go into like Sally Jesse Raphael work with right now, and I'm gonna ask Daniela because Natasha mentioned something about if you build a city for women, it's good for all. And you all just the YWC just announced the gender-based budgeting. Do you want to explain what that is and how that impacts the city?
At an event a few weeks ago, and author Leslie Kern, who wrote a book called Feminist City, actually says, if the city works for women, it works for kids, and it also works for elders, because women are always more often than not taking care of those folks, so therefore it works for everyone, is the concept. Yeah, we put together a proposal to the city originally to do gender equity based budgeting, trying to put some accounting behind building a city for women, but like the Kids Aid School we ran, we consulted with many partners who serve other equity deserving populations and decided to expand this to be called equity budgeting, equity based budgeting. So over the next year or so, we're going to be working with 6 or 8 internal city departments doing some education through a community of practice, bringing in experts to support them in the work that they are already doing to develop an accountability framework that will be publicly available for you to read and scrutinize and participate in. If you haven't already, I highly recommend you sign up for Engage Hamilton, the city's official engagement platform. I'm sure you can get the information from your counselor's office if you can't find it online, but you definitely can find it online. We'll be doing all of our engagements.
Yeah, because the budget really shows your values. like where you put the money is where it matters. All right, Richard.
Hi, thank you so much for this. This has been wonderful. My heart right now is quite sad about a lot of the provincial government's bills. And it feels you are wonderfully accessible and the provincial government outside of our MPP less so. I'm wondering, is there any like how, sorry. These bills on the provincial level, does that extend in any way to the, sorry, nobody likes these bills on the municipal level. Does that extend any way to the provincial level? And then also what can we do, knowing that our MPP is, you know, wonderful? What can we do to kind of push back on these?
Civic Europe is in the official opposition. Okay, yes. Abby?
Sure, thanks, Katie, for that question. I mean, we need to, showing up, advocating, writing those letters. I mean, you have a fantastic MVP, but there are MVPs that are less accessible within Hamilton that you could definitely be reaching out to as well. What me and Tim were both saying that we serve our wards, we also serve the entirety of Hamilton. So just because your address doesn't fall within their mapped out area specifically, you can still contact them, and that voice really makes a big difference. We've been doing a lot of advocacy work as trustees across Ontario, and one of our trustees works in an MVP office of conservative government. So she's able to let us know what is going on and how people are speaking out, and people are calling and they are listening. And even though you're not talking specifically to your MP, that voice is making an impact. They tally all the calls they're getting and they communicate that back to their so I would say just keep showing up, keep writing the letters, and talk to your friends, talk to the folks at the playground, at Flying Squirrel, wherever you are, to chat with your community. And depending on what the issue is talk at your school council meetings, delegate at City Hall, and share that message around as much as you can. But I think there's so much coming out of the provincial government right now, and we get exhausted and overwhelmed, and that's kind of the point. So we need to keep pushing back, and even though it doesn't sound like feel like we're doing anything, we truly are. And we just need to keep pushing back. We kept the trustee position, but with our advocacy for help. And that was all because of your calls. Work. There's still more to be done to secure that job more permanently, but that wouldn't have happened without those calls, without those campaigns. So yeah, it's hard when there's not an immediate action or reaction to your action, but it really is making a difference. So keep doing what you're doing.
Excellent. And actually, I'll get you to hold the phone. We had some questions online before we started. And one of those was how there's a misunderstanding of what school boards are allowed to do. What are school boards and trustees allowed to do?
So I think there's an important distinction between a school board and the board of trustees. So our school board is the entire operation. But the board of trustees is 11 of us that sit around the table. And we mostly deal with advocating for our community and trustee development or policy development. So I think the big misconception with trustees is that we have a huge hand in what happens at the schools on an operational level on a day-to-day basis. And even though we don't have much role in those day-to-day issues that happen within our schools, the advocacy piece of our role is very meaningful. So I get many phone calls. I think I got 4 or 5 messages just today for operational issues within our schools. And even though I wasn't able to call their principal or show up at the school and fix the problem, I was able to get them in touch with the right people to sort out their problems in a very timely manner. And then, which is wonderful. So yeah, I think it's just, yeah. And then Katie, who came to me a couple months back with a concern, which was partially operational and partially policy level. But that advocacy piece that Katie did ended in me having the opportunity to bring forward a motion to write policy around artificial intelligence within our school system. So thinking creatively on, it's like, no, I can't go into my schools and change the rules around AI. But we can work together at the policy level to start that change.
Interesting, thank you. And then earlier you also talked about delegating and how it's important to delegate. Are there any questions from the audience? Yeah, okay. I'll ask my delegating question after.
Hi, I'm Melissa, and I'm in Role 4. My husband, me screaming, so I wanted to be a different girl. And now I love it. I'm so happy. Built a community, we have such great people. What I want to say about Abby's role as a trustee is I'm an Abby working to stay my trustee. Abby's a parent, I'm a parent, and I mentioned my kid has a go on it with believe school handled it perfectly well. Also, shout out to Miss Emily at Taekwondo, to care of herself. But then Abby said, don't be afraid to do it and just leave me on them so that I know. And as a parent, as my first kid, I'm figuring this out as I go. I'm sure pretty close parents, and it's just nice to have that extra little layer of support so that she knows. And I think thank you, Abby.
So not to like focus on that, but Abby delegated this week because Councilor Frank Tammy passed a motion successfully. Sorry, it was passed at GIC. It got bumped. She delegated. The point is she delegated. And so we had a question online, which was during trustee Zapie's delegation, she was correct. This is for Tammy. Oh, it's the tough one, remember? She was correct about how keeping locally elected school trustees, how it's important for local democracy and to be accountable to the voters. If this is true, then why did we change the Public Health Committee, which was entirely made up of elected officials, to the Board of Health, which is half elected officials and half appointed citizens plus one? And also, if you could also tell us how they were appointed. Or how.
So with the Board of Health, you have to understand this is dealing with public health. Nobody on council has any health background. You are asking 16 elected officials to weigh in on health policy. I don't have a background in health. And so this was a key consideration when it came to shifting from entirely all elected officials to now including individuals that have health backgrounds and lived experiences, because that's how we make better policies. When you now have people that actually know what they're talking about, helping to drive actual policies that will affect our public health. In terms of how the elected people are chosen from council appoints them, so there are 6 of us that are appointed. And that's because we put our names forward and we said, I actually have a genuine interest in public health. I also have people in my life that are very close to me that are in public health and in health. So, and also Pascal has a public health background, so I am I'm very committed to public health. The other 7, one is from the school board or an educational representative. The other 6 all had to apply and they had to showcase what is their interest, what is their background, and they actually had to go through an evaluation process and ultimately go through a selection committee in order to be selected and then appointed by council to be on Board of Health. Again, what we have at Board of Health, we have actual doctors. 3 of them. We also have a epidemiologist. We also have a health advocate that was already doing a lot of health advocacy. So these are people that are exactly suited to help drive public health policy for the city of Hamilton. Because again, we have 16 elected officials, none of us have a health background. And is that who you really want to be driving all of our public health policies?
So I'm gonna follow up on that one. So the way you described it is that you switched it to the Board of Health because they were more equipped and knowledgeable about public health issues. So now 2 things. One, how does that differ from like Public Works, for example, because you're not an engineer?
The Board of Health though, because it has a lot of public health implications. Policies when it comes to things that will definitively affect the way in which we deliver public health. In Public Works, for example, we are still sitting there with public works officials that are engineers, these are our professional staff. At the end of the day, it is also around, we're not actually signing off on actual engineering drawings, but we are, however, looking at how our lived experience affects the public realm and the public built environment in a different way that an engineer may not have. So this is why I think that having a public works made entirely of councilors is sufficient. It makes sense because we also connect directly with our communities. We have direct access to actual professionals. So it covers off a significant amount of the policy work. The work of Board of Health is a very different beast. Because again, we're speaking about everything from vaccine mandates to social determinants of health to how we drive policies around access. So it's different. And I'm not sure if I answered it exactly the way I would have wanted it to, but that's kind of in my mind.
And actually, if we tie it back to democracy, or one of the main reasons why we did it, or also did it, is because that's what the community was begging for. So yes, we have time for one more question, because we want to go to sleep. And then we also want to leave some time for Joanne to close us off. So we have 2 questions. You have a question? Second question. Is it on?
Some of you know me. But I really appreciate all the perspective you shared on my books because it helps us understand how democracy is being forward as well. And one of the things that I'm always looking for when I'm engaging or bringing up issues is what that constraint is, and also I think you mentioned why it didn't happen or why it can't happen. Not always looking for the success story, but trying to understand better what the constraints are and what the restrictions are is really important, at least from my perspective, to remain engaged, as I can put it to the side and say, you know, we tried and revisit it, but now I understand a little bit better, like how to move it forward. And I think there's a lot of good ideas here. Joanne brought up something about more casual conversations, I think are more effective and probably bring more people in. I think part of what I do to try to help my community is I'm often taking a lot of your social media posts and trying to simplify them for other people I know to say, hey, pay attention to this. You know, show up here, and there's a lot of hesitation. And I'm like, I really know what's happening, and trying to just drill down with it. Just come because it's about, you know, education. It's about healthcare. It's about whatever. And you need to be part of it and at least know something about it. So that makes me feel engaged by helping other people.
more engaged. And the last thing I wanted question was for Abby. Like how many hours are you putting in for that 10K? Because I'm pretty sure it's more than 15 in a month, right?
So, I haven't done the math. But I work a lot. I would say for the majority of the time when my partner is home, working his 9 to 5, I'm also working my session. And then we have, I would say 3 to 4 nights a week, we're in meetings for 2 to 4 hours. So I miss a lot of that times. Gymnastics is tonight. I don't think I made it to 1. Oh no, I didn't make it to 1 this year so far. So it is a ton of work. It doesn't have to be that much work, but the looming threat of us potentially not being here and the addition that I've only been in my role for a year and a half. So I was elected in a by-election where my trustee colleagues have been there for almost 4 years. So I have this swat to catch. And there's a lot of research that goes into just not have been participating for those 3 years that they were in that role. So yes, I would say that I essentially view the role as a volunteer position. That 10,000 or 13,000 that we get is really just to offset if we need like childcare while I'm at a meeting, or if I have to miss work, or those expenses that come with not being available in the evenings. But I don't think that it can really be, it's not considered pay. It's really an offset of costs for volunteering for our community. All right, wait, sorry, I don't actually know who, sorry. Oh.
Really quickly. As Tammy and Pascal know, Ward 4 is sons often uneducated about how government works and what the roles are. Is there a package or something that I can, like a flyer I can print off and I can go around my neighborhood and talk to people, drop it in their mailbox? This is how it goes.
That's a good question. We have a couple of places where you could have a look. So all of the things I talked about are available to anybody on our website. So if you go to, if you search up it's really easy to find the health emergency area. We've created a resource called Name Where You Live, which is people who are considering running for office. It's got a little bit of everything. We're about to update it. The candidate guide recently come out from the province. We're going to put that in there. There is a page that talks about what different orders of government are responsible for. It's not perfect because there are different things in multi-tiered environments and where there's different responsibilities, but that's a useful piece. The other space where there's good materials, civic education resources. There's a lot of good information that you could use that would be relevant to anybody. And also on our website, one of the most viewed areas is our Municipal 101 on the AMO website. Has a really good information about what we're responsible for in local government, et cetera. So there's 3 spots.
Finish off. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for our panelists that are here. Abby, thank you for being you. And you. I think that ultimately I am interested in Joanne's closing ceremony and closing prayer. You can ask Joanne to close this out with good heart.
Thank you very much, because I suppose some of these out there in a long time. Your strength, give it to others. What is your passion? Reveal it to others.
What is your understanding teaching to others? So as we go forward, we should remember our past. I also like to say, especially people that are here. Is thank them for letting me have this time to come to this. Here. Just like saying which, very important that girls are. Girl, it just, thank you very much for having me. And that's, where do it's like, which.
I mean, that's it. Slice the aroma.